there's an expression in basketball, and I'm sure it's an expression in other parts of life, but the expression in basketball goes a little something like this. Pros do what they can do and don't do what they cannot. There's other expressions. Some guys will say, make them pay to see what you can't do. The idea is play to your strengths. Play to your strengths. Know who you are. Be true to who you are. Everyone has strengths. Everyone has weaknesses. And play up those strengths. And don't even talk about those weaknesses. Kids or immature adults try and prove to everyone else what they say you can't do can in fact be done. And I get it. I grew up watching Smokey and the Bandit, right? Might be my favorite movie. And in it, the snowman says, Snowman says, why are we doing this? And Bandit says, because they said it couldn't be done. But we would all agree that the bandit, Smokey and the Bandit, was a little bit on the immature side. He pulled it off, run to Texarkana, Texas, and back to get Coors beer. That's bootlegging, son. But the fact is that in sports and in life, as you grow older, you understand yourself, you know what you can and cannot do, and you simply play up to those strengths. Steph Curry's not the best player in the NBA. I've heard people say that. I understand his impact. I think he's a magnificent basketball player. And he's the type of player that his style will be replicated for years to come. We've already seen the next generation of guys learning to play like Steph in the form of Trae Young. Trae, just like Steph, son of a very good player, not an NBA player like Steph. Trae's not as quick or maybe as athletic as even Steph is now, but continues to grow into his body. He had a spectacular season this year for the Hawks, in where he played up to his strengths. He's a great shooter. He's a great passer. And he's a clever defensive player that makes up for the fact that he's not terribly athletic, he's not terribly strong, he's not particularly good on defense. It's fascinating because Kyrie Irving, the new rumors out there, Cowherd had this, Stephen A. Smith had this, that it appears that Kyrie Irving's headed to Brooklyn and he'll become a Net. And while I don't think Boston is going to say good riddance, I do think that Kyrie is still in the kind of adolescent stage of being an NBA player, and he may never grow out of it. During their last series in the NBA playoffs against the Milwaukee Bucks, several times over, despite the fact that the assignments were to have him not guard and not switch onto Giannis Antetokounmpo, he did so. Not only was he not supposed to switch onto Giannis, but look, their whole defensive philosophy was to hide Kyrie Irving. Because, kind of like Steph, he's not a great defender. He's got quick hands, he can get steals off the basketball, he can be active, but man-to-man, guarding bigger men, he's not great. He might not even be good. And everyone in the NBA seems to know this, except Kyrie Irving. What's the story of this year? Kyrie wanted to be a leader, and he's not a leader. Why did he want to be a leader? Because everyone said he wasn't a leader. And guess what? He's not. He spent this entire year trying to prove to us he was something that he was not. Ask the Boston Celtics. Ask people in the NBA. Ask his former teammates in Cleveland. Ask people who cover the league. They'll all say he's one of the great closers in basketball. He's the best finishing point guard since Rod Strickland. His godfather played in the NBA. But he's not a leader, and he's not a great defender, and he's not really a true ball distributor. Might not even be a point guard. He's a lead guard. Whereas Steph Curry is who he is, knows who he is, and doesn't fight that. Late in games, you don't see him switching off and trying to man up like KD does and guard James Harden. You didn't see that? That was Kevin Durant. Why? Because Kevin Durant's 7 feet tall, and even when he gets beat, he can recover because of his length. Whereas Steph Curry, he does what he's supposed to do defensively, stays active, and tries to get steals. And he can play with supreme self-confidence because he knows, look, I know I'm a scorer. I know I'm allowed to get away with some turnovers. I am not your prototypical point guard. When I give up the basketball, I become an off guard. So when I hear, and by the way, this is like a made-up controversy, this idea there's lots of haters towards Steph Curry. There's not. Right? There are haters, but those are people on social media who somehow their forced opinion is put up there with real opinions that actually matter. People are either in the camp of he's the best player in the NBA or he's one of the great players in the NBA that does have some flaws. That's not being a hater. But Steph Curry has a chance to do something tonight, which he has not shown to do, nor could most mortal men do, which is lift up a bunch of backups and take down the best team in the Eastern Conference. He might or might not have Clay. He won't have Kevin Durant. He won't have Kevon Looney. They'll be at a talent and depth disadvantage in comparison to the Toronto Raptors, and a health disadvantage compared to the Toronto Raptors. They're not expected to win. And if Clay doesn't show up, if Steph can pull off a win there, it's nothing short of miraculous. But the reason that Steph is mostly beloved and more successful at the end of the day with his team, as opposed to Kyrie Irving, who runs the risk of ruining the chemistry of an incredible bunch in Brooklyn, right? Like Brooklyn this year feels like the Celtics last year. Lower expectations, and yet they exceeded seemingly all of them. That's because Kyrie is not the pro's pro, does not do what he does and doesn't do what he doesn't do. I mean, look, we've seen this from Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson knew he was good at being Magic Johnson. Being president of a team, making day-to-day decisions when you don't have day-to-day investment, that's not what he does. That's not who he is. We hide it by saying it's not in his brand, but really, just not in his wheelhouse of what he does best. At least in a position of power like Magic was, you can hire people that know what you don't know to hide for your weaknesses, whereas you can't do that when you're a ball player, right? It's your decision on how you're going to play, even if you have talented guys that can hide those things around you. But Magic wasn't a coach. Magic wasn't a nightly talk show host. Magic's not a president. Magic Johnson is Magic Johnson. Yeah, a bit of an empty suit. But he's got a great smile, and people still have a tendency to gravitate towards him. You know, how many ex-Pittsburgh Steelers are like, man, they only want us to do one thing in Pittsburgh. Yeah, because they want you to do what you do well. They don't want Le'Veon Bell to be a rapper. They want Le'Veon Bell to be a running back. Shocker there. And the crazy part about life is, and look, I've been guilty of this because I think I'm good at multiple things. And by not focusing solely on radio or sometimes focusing on I've had a television show or doing basketball games, I understand the idea your brain sits there and goes like, hey, I have all these other different parts to my brain which I want to use. I want to explore kind of the boundaries of my intelligence and my capabilities. But if you do one thing at an exemplary level in this life, that's pretty special. And I think maybe that's the thing we're missing as fans. That's the thing that parents miss. And more than anything, that's the thing that stars miss. You know, Garth Brooks once upon a time had an alter ego album. Do you guys remember that? An alter ego album. Of course, it bombed. Why? Because he's good at being Garth Brooks. Singing country songs that he drew from old rock and roll songs or old country songs and made into his own. And he lights up a room with his personality and his performances. That's who he is. Arguably I believe he's the most successful individual performer in the history of American music in terms of record sales. It's crazy, right? He's had HBO, CBS, especially had his own show in Vegas, whatever, which is all about his musical journey. But there was a time in which he wanted nothing to do with being Garth Brooks. He wanted an alternate ego. And you know what he learned? Hey, I'm really good at one thing. I'm going to do that one thing. And that's what Steph Curry has learned. I'm really good at being Steph Curry. Are you a point guard? Not really. Are you a two guard? Not really. You're a little bit of both. Are you a great defender? Not really. But I know how to be effective on defense, and when I get the ball or move without the basketball, I'm incredibly effective on offense whether I touch it or I don't. Kyrie Irving spends an entire year trying to prove to us he's a leader, which he is not. He can run a team, which he cannot. And that he's a defender, which he is not. Adults and pros do what they do and don't do what they cannot.